Expert content is nothing new on YouTube. I mean, sure, I imagine that James Bond is probably unrealistic, but having an actual spy master tell me that James Bond is unrealistic is way cooler. As a matter of disclosure, this is a channel that I've worked with personally before. They were part of our Little Monster courses, so I've had a bunch of one-on-one sessions with them. I don't think that should change anything editorially, because either way, the point of the deep dives is to talk about how to do a channel better. If I've talked with them before on how to do better, that's basically the same thing. Mama Dr. Jones is an OBGYN. As such, they naturally focus on pregnancy content, so a lot of weird deliveries and strange pregnancies. A big show is I didn't know I was pregnant. Of course. There's actually a couple of really interesting things with doing medical content from an expert react perspective that I'd like to dive into, so let's jump straight in. Okay, since I already kind of talked about it, let's talk about approachability in expert content. Let's say I'm a thought leader in nanotechnology. I can tell you that a movie scene with a gray goo scenario is a little bit overdone or a little bit overdramatic, and you'll probably believe me, but you won't necessarily understand where I'm coming from. If I talk about how carbon tubes are gonna get past the blood-brain barrier, what does that mean to you? A lot of fiction shows that experts' reaction to are simplifying a concept, so an expert can take that simple idea and bring it back to its complicated form. Depending on what you've seen in your own family, you may or may not know that pregnancy can be something that's really, really complicated and really, really scary, and that a lot of people have to go through. When a medical drama show has to do an emergency C-section, that's not over most people's heads. Something that's really interesting when Mama Dr. Jones reacts to I didn't know I was pregnant is when she's able to look at things and say, actually, that's pretty common. That's not something you have to be scared about. Because I was very scared up until that point, until I knew it was common. It's taking something that was super complicated and super dramatic and super scary and bringing it back to the realm of approachable. And because this is something that's relatively common, it also opens up a different layer of content. The show I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant is about people who didn't know they were pregnant. That's not really a great surprise. The thing that I think's interesting here is that it's based on real stories. They dramatize the action, but these are real stories of people who didn't know they were pregnant and had unusual pregnancy. A lot of experts, for some reason or another, can't do as much with true stories. You can use true stories in other fields, but it takes a lot more work. Medical drama lends itself to being talked about much more easily. Something I want to mention about content related to pregnancies and unusual pregnancies is it does appear to be somewhat seasonal. It's a little bit hard to tell because Mama Dr. Jones has done a tremendous job of growing in the past year. So if you look at their views over time, it's growing. But we're seeing certain spikes in certain times of the year that are related to time when people have the most births. September was a particularly good month for them, and September happens to be when a lot of babies are born. Which, like, look, if you think that this is gross, you've probably already clicked off the video. So if you're unsure why that is, September is 9 months away from Christmas. It's very cold. Other people are very warm. There's not really anything we can do about seasonality in content. It kind of sucks though, because the time when you would be most busy with your expert job is also the time that you would want to strike when the iron is hot for content. Again, nothing we can do, but good to note in a channel deep dive. And on that segue, let's jump right into the analytics. As I said, this channel has done really well in the last year or so. The last few months in particular have seen a pretty impressive spike. Part of this is that production has just gotten better. Mama Dr. Jones hasn't made any secret of the fact that it took her a while to understand some of the finer points of filming. You're a fantastic OBGYN, that doesn't make you a fantastic personality off the bat. It's something that you have to develop into, and you can tell that she really has a lot of charisma now. Just like being an OBGYN, being a personality on the internet is something that you have to work at and you have to get good at over time. They are a very quick learner and they've gotten into it very quickly, but there's always a ramping up process. They've also been much more consistent with strategy in recent months. Programming is a huge part of any channel and anything that you want to succeed. If you look back into the past of Mama Dr. Jones's library, you'll see content like vlogs that aren't really happening as much on the channel anymore. They didn't work as well, and they've done a great job of taking what has worked and refining those things and doing them more frequently and pulling back on things that have worked less. As a side note, that's content that could work on another channel, but again, it's a case of having too many things on one channel fragments your audience. It doesn't really help any piece of your content. They've also been getting into the collaboration game. They did a video with Dr. Mike, and that's doing really well, and collaboration is always awesome. Keep at it. One of the benefits to being a great personality with great programming is that you have fantastic average view duration. Mama Dr. Jones is currently above 9 minutes AVD, which is incredible on YouTube. I barely see that ever, unless you're talking about channels that upload like hour-long compilations. For videos that are 18 minutes, like a 50% average retention is fantastic. Theoretically, sometimes you can do better than that, but we actually wouldn't recommend going too far beyond that in length, because if you get too long, you start to intimidate an audience away, and they might not click on your video at all. Because if I come to the homepage and I see something that says 40 minutes long, it's like, oh yeah, I don't have time for that right now. Oh hey look, there's a 3-minute kitten video. Average view duration tends to be a metric of viewer satisfaction. The people who are clicking on the video really like it and are sticking around for a really, really long time. The other part of the equation then is how many people are interested in it, which gets into programming. So the programming and average view duration gives us two pieces of the puzzle. We have programming that people are interested in, and then we have content that's compelling because people are clearly sticking around to watch it. They must like it. The third part of the equation then is CTR, and this is where Mama Dr. Jones probably has the most space to improve. We're currently looking at about a 3.5% CTR, which is about 2.5% in suggested. This is not the worst CTR I've seen by any stretch of the imagination, but this is the place that we can definitely identify improvements. If you can get that up to 7%, the channel is going to take off like wildfire. So where do we look to improve CTR? The main two places are titles and thumbnails. The titles on the channel I really like. They're pretty simple. We're not doing crazy BuzzFeed hooks of, oh my god, the craziest birth ever, birth to bad baby. I generally like the titles on the channel. Part of me had wondered initially if OBGYN was too specific and Doctors React would have been better, but in testing it out, it doesn't look like that's the case. These titles don't have a wild and crazy hook right up front, which we would normally recommend, but these also speak to an idea on the platform. This gets to the idea of the expert reaction. We're showing what kind of expert we have and what they're going to do. It tells the audience what they're looking for right up front, which is important because we want to tell the audience what they're getting into. Ideally, we want people who click on it to really enjoy it and watch it for a long time. We don't want anyone to feel deceived or will tank our average view duration. The place I would say Mama Dr. Jones can really make big wins is by having stronger thumbnails. The thumbnails are decent. You can see that they come from a place of instruction. This is somebody who's looked up how to do thumbnails, but I think there's some additional refinement. For example, we see a lot of text on thumbnails, and that text doesn't usually tell us anything different than the title. Ideally, if we're going to have text on the title, that's where we want our really super duper punchy statement. That's where we want to say something that's going to draw your eye in and make people say, oh, what's this? I'm going to look at the title to figure out what this thumbnail is. Oh, OBGYN React. Okay, I want to watch that, so I'm going to click on it. Ideally, you're going to be drawn to a very emotive face. Your eyes being drawn there is going to cause you to read the text on the thumbnail. If that's super duper interesting, you're going to go look at the title to see what the video's about. That's generally the journey that people take. So we need that text to be really special. Another reason it's important for titles to be super duper clear is we don't want to get suggested in the wrong places. So if I have a title that's too far out and has keywords that are too far different, I can wind up suggested in places that I don't mean to be. This is actually probably part of the reason that Mama Dr. Jones tends to do better when reacting to things that are very explicitly about pregnancy or very explicitly about medical drama. I didn't know I was pregnant, an easy value sell. If somebody's looking for I didn't know I was pregnant, an OBGYN reacting to that is probably straight up their alley. If I search Downton Abbey and I get OBGYN reacts to Downton Abbey, there's a lot less chance that's something that I'm interested in. That comes down to a programming question, but generally speaking, I would want to stay as close to pregnancy as possible. So I didn't know I was pregnant is a great one. House, Grey's Anatomy, ER tend to be better wins than things that are outside that scope. There's a couple of interesting things when I look at thumbnail statistics that don't make a ton of sense, but I think they might actually come back to programming. So for example, I didn't know I was pregnant has a number of thumbnails that have a wider shot in the background. Typically this wouldn't work, but I didn't know I was pregnant videos do really well. So is the thumbnail actually great, or is it the fact that it's the programming and I didn't know I was pregnant is doing really great? Those are the things that get tricky to test. Over time, ideally what I'd like to see is a test on what the secondary element is and how close it is to the screen and how readable it is. Over time, ideally I'd like to experiment with how many words are in the thumbnail total. I'd like to experiment in reaction content specifically about whether or not it's better if the logo is in the thumbnail. Because on the one hand, it's text that doesn't really tell us anything new. On the other hand, with something like I didn't know I was pregnant, there's no central character, so I don't know how you communicate that visually. Maybe you don't. Maybe that's better. Maybe you need to. I'm not sure. That's something that we'd have to test. That's one of the most frustrating things about thumbnails is they tend to take a lot of testing over time. This isn't necessarily something that you're going to solve overnight. Something that we've seen and have actively encouraged is using brighter colors to stand out from the background of YouTube. So a lot of bright reds and a lot of bright yellows, which tend to contrast really well. It seems to have worked. In the last 90 days or so, we've seen Mama Dr. Jones' CTR increase a little bit, and in addition, we've seen impressions increase quite a bit. At the time of recording, the past 90 days or so, we've seen CTR appear to rise a little bit, and impressions have risen a lot. We generally consider this a CTR win. Even if CTR is holding steady, if impressions are increasing by a huge margin, usually what that means is videos are getting really good day one CTR and being shown to a wider audience than is normal. So if impressions are exploding and your CTR is a little bit better or roughly the same, that's usually a really good sign. So it's something that we're happy to see and we hope to continue seeing. Another opportunity that comes up for us is upload frequency. Currently, Mama Dr. Jones is updating at once per week. And side note, they communicate their schedule. Oh my goodness. I recommend this every single time with just about every single client because I almost never see anybody talk about their schedule anywhere. Mama Dr. Jones has their schedule right up front and it's so helpful, you guys. Communicate your schedule. Communicate your schedule. Oh my God, communicate your schedule. If I upload every Monday and I'm careful to tell people that I upload every Monday, my core fans are going to know when I'm putting up a video. They're going to be there on day one. They're going to show YouTube that they're super duper interested. It's so helpful to tell people when you upload. That said, Mama Dr. Jones's content is good and people seem to really like it, and production allowing, I think it could support a second upload per week with the audience still being super interested and super engaged. So what I'd probably do is keep the Monday upload and then do something like a Thursday or a Friday, maybe get something on the weekend. Mama Dr. Jones tends to do really well in browse views, which indicates a really good core audience, so I'm guessing that they'll come back on that day as long as she communicates it clearly. Obviously, this is something that's way easier said than done. Doubling the amount of uploads that you do is a tall order, especially if you're also an actual OBGYN. The general rule, I try and approach a deep dive like this as the first month of a consulting report. I'm looking to get a sense of what the channel's about and how they've been doing and where they've been doing the best and where they can use the most improvement. And then this is gonna dictate the pace for the rest of the consultation. In this case, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about thumbnails because I think that's where we have the most improvement, and I'm going to see how the channel feels about doing a second upload because I think that that's another place that we could get huge returns. If you have that core audience that's here one day and you can have them come back for another day, you can effectively double your viewership. Again, though, that's a tremendous amount of work. So for you watching, what should the main takeaways be? First, have amazing content. Mama Dr. Jones is able to do what they're able to do because their content's really good. They take something that a lot of people have to go through that can be super duper scary and super duper intense, and they make it approachable, and they also make it fun by putting it in the context of how it's approached in fiction, and also reduce the terror of fiction. Maybe I'm just the only one who gets really scared by like emergency C-section stuff. Two, that anyone doing any kind of expert content should really look for the ways to make it as approachable as possible. If we can draw on something like reality TV or things that are based on a true story and give greater context to that, so much the better, because obviously it's going to feel like real life if it's real, or reality TV's simulacrum of real. And three is thumbnails, 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 thumbnails. No matter what channel you are, no matter what your content is, you will always be doing better if you can have better thumbnails. Thumbnails are the reason that people look at your video over the other 20 that are in the suggested tab. It's the reason you stop scrolling down on your phone as opposed to keep going. If you can get more people clicking on your video day one, it sets you up for a better day two. That better day two will set you up for a better day three, and so on and so on and so on. The greatest content in the world only matters if you can get your audience to click on it, and the first step to that is always thumbnails. That's why we have a thumbnail service. We've looked at a lot of thumbnails and a lot of CTRs over the years, and it can be a tremendous pain if you are not a graphic designer by trade. So if you're interested, link in the description to check out Monster Thumbnails. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and a very special thank you to Mama Dr. Jones for letting us do a deep dive on her channel. Be sure to check out her channel as well. There's a lot of really fun stuff on there, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And if you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more videos on audience development every single week. See you next time.